Hello everyone, enjoy this relaxing moment with Hstorytales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe and share your thoughts in comments while you watch. Zed stood on the balcony of his opulent mansion, gazing at the sprawling city below. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the African sky in hues of gold and orange. His life, a testament to hard work and perseverance, had taken him from a small village to the heights of luxury. He was only 32, yet his achievements surpassed those of men twice his age. The chirping of birds from the lush garden below reminded Zed of simpler times, days when his dreams were nothing but scribbles in an old notebook. Growing up in a modest household in western Nigeria, his parents, both school teachers, had instilled in him the value of education and determination. Despite financial struggles, they made sacrifices to ensure Zed and his siblings had access to schooling. Zed's journey wasn't an easy one. In university, he was often seen as the quiet, studious young man who rarely socialized. While others partied, Zed spent nights poring over books and developing business ideas. His diligence paid off when he graduated with honors in economics and business administration. He earned scholarships, excelled in graduate school, and soon after began building his empire. By the time he turned 28, Zed had launched 2 successful tech startups and diversified into real estate. His name became synonymous with success. But beneath the surface of triumph lay a void, a lingering emptiness that even his wealth couldn't fill. That evening, Zed sat with his fiancée, Vivian, in their elegantly furnished dining room. The table was adorned with African-themed decor, from hand-carved wooden candle holders to vibrant Ankara table runners. Vivian, poised and graceful, was the picture of sophistication. Her light brown skin glowed under the chandelier's soft light, and her long braids framed her delicate face. "Zed, do you think we should add your old university friends to the list?" Vivian asked, glancing up from a stack of wedding invitations. Zed nodded, though he seemed distracted. His hands flipped through a pile of cards until they stopped at one. His eyes lingered on the name, Jenny Okafor. Vivian noticed his hesitation. "Who's Jenny?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "She's an old friend," Zed replied, his tone casual, though his thoughts betrayed him. Jenny wasn't just an old friend, she was the girl he once loved during his university years. Their relationship had been a whirlwind of passion and promise, but it ended abruptly when Zed's ambitions took him away. "She's important enough to invite?" Vivian pressed. "Yes," Zed said firmly. He leaned back, staring at the invitation in his hand. A part of him wanted Jenny to see the life he had built, to witness the success she once doubted. Deep down, Zed knew his intentions weren't entirely noble. He wanted to flaunt his achievements, to show Jenny what she had missed out on. Vivian shrugged and returned to her task. "All right, if you think it's necessary." The following day, Zed's personal assistant delivered Jenny's invitation. Jenny lived in a modest apartment in the city. Life hadn't been kind to her. She had aged beyond her years, the lines on her face a testament to struggles she rarely spoke of. When she opened the envelope and saw Zed's name, her hands trembled. Memories flooded back, of late-night talks, shared dreams, and the pain of being left behind. But what caught her eye wasn't Zed's name, it was the opulence of the invitation itself. Embossed with gold lettering and adorned with intricate patterns, it spoke of a life far removed from hers. Jenny's first instinct was to decline. But as she looked at her 7-year-old son, Dave, playing with a toy car in the corner, she reconsidered. "Maybe it's time he knows the truth," she murmured to herself. Back at Zed's mansion, preparations for the wedding were in full swing. Guests from across the continent were confirming their attendance. The grand event was set to take place at an exclusive venue that blended modern architecture with traditional African aesthetics. Zed spared no expense, ensuring every detail reflected his success. Yet, as the days passed, Zed found himself thinking more about Jenny's potential reaction than the ceremony itself. What would she say when she saw him? Would she regret their past? Or would she merely dismiss him with indifference? Vivian, oblivious to Zed's inner turmoil, busied herself with finalizing the details. She loved Zed deeply and admired his ambition, though she occasionally felt overshadowed by his larger-than-life persona. To her, Their union was a partnership of equals, a blending of their affluent families' legacies. 5 days before the wedding, Zed stood in his study, staring at a photograph of himself from his university days. In the picture, he was grinning ear to ear, his arm around a younger, carefree Jenny. He sighed, placing the photo back in the drawer. "It's just one guest," he muttered. But deep down, Zed knew this wasn't about one guest. It was about confronting the ghosts of his past and seeking validation for the man he had become. As the sun set over the city, Zed resolved to face whatever lay ahead with confidence. After all, he was Zed, successful, unstoppable, and unshakable. Or so he thought. The day of the wedding dawned with the brilliance of an African sunrise. The skies above Lagos were painted in soft hues of orange and pink, casting a serene glow over the bustling city. At the grand venue nestled in the outskirts, preparations were in full swing. The sprawling estate had been transformed into a haven of African elegance. From the towering palm trees that lined the driveway to the intricately woven Kent cloth draped over the tables, every detail celebrated Zed's roots and his journey to success. Zed stood in front of a mirror in his private suite, adjusting the cufflinks on his bespoke suit. The finely tailored fabric fit him like a second skin, its deep navy hue contrasting with the white and gold embroidery along the lapels, a subtle nod to African royalty. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the day. His groomsmen entered the room, their lively banter momentarily distracting him. They clapped him on the back and praised his outfit. Zed smiled, but his thoughts drifted to the guest list, specifically Jenny. Was she coming? Meanwhile, in a modest apartment across the city, Jenny dressed her 7-year-old son, Dave, in a neat white shirt and a pair of navy blue trousers. The boy fidgeted as she adjusted his collar. "Mama, why do I have to go?" Dave asked, his voice innocent and curious. Jenny knelt to his level, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. "It's important, my love. We're going to meet someone who," she hesitated, "someone who needs to see you." Dave tilted his head but didn't press further. Jenny sighed, wondering if attending the wedding was the right decision. But a part of her felt it was time to confront the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. The ceremony began under the shade of a massive baobab tree. Guests arrived in vibrant traditional attire, their outfits a riot of colors, bright yellows, deep greens, and striking reds. Drummers played rhythmic beats, and dancers moved with synchronized grace, their feet pounding the ground in celebration. Vivian appeared first, walking down the aisle with poise and grace. Her wedding gown was a masterpiece of African craftsmanship, beaded lace adorned with cowrie shells and gold accents. The crowd gasped in admiration as she made her way to the altar, where Zed waited. His heart raced, not just from the sight of his bride but from the lingering thought of what might happen if Jenny arrived. The officiant began the ceremony, his words blending traditional blessings with modern vows. Zed and Vivian exchanged looks of affection, their smiles warm and genuine. For a brief moment, Zed forgot about his inner turmoil. But 8 minutes into the ceremony, the atmosphere shifted. Heads turned toward the entrance as Jenny walked in, holding Dave's hand. Her outfit was simple yet elegant, a flowing green gown that complemented her dark skin and braided hair. But it wasn't her presence alone that caused a stir. It was the boy beside her. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they noticed the uncanny resemblance between Dave and Zed. The boy's sharp features, dark almond-shaped eyes, and the slight dimple on his right cheek were unmistakable. Whispered conversations erupted among the guests. Zed's heart skipped a beat. His gaze locked onto Dave and his mind raced. He turned to Vivian, who looked confused but unaware of the growing tension. Without causing a scene, Zed signaled Jenny with a subtle nod to step outside. She hesitated, but his pleading eyes convinced her. Zed found Jenny near the garden, away from the prying eyes of the guests. The lush greenery and blooming hibiscus flowers provided a semblance of privacy. "Who is this boy?" Zed asked, his voice low but urgent, his eyes darting toward Dave, who was playing with a flower nearby. Jenny's expression was calm, almost serene. "His name is Dave," she said softly. Zed clenched his fists, his frustration barely contained. Jenny, I don't have time for riddles. Why does he look like me? Jenny met his gaze, her tone steady. Because he's your son, Zed. The words hit him like a thunderbolt. Zed staggered back, struggling to process what he'd just heard. He looked at Dave again, this time with a mix of disbelief and awe. The son. Jenny nodded. I didn't come here to ruin your wedding, Zed. I came to tell you the truth, something I've kept to myself for years. I thought you deserved to know. Zed ran a hand through his hair, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. Why now? Why didn't you tell me before? Jenny sighed, her voice tinged with sadness. You left, Zed. You were so focused on your dreams, and I didn't want to hold you back. I thought I could handle it on my own. Zed stared at her, searching for answers in her eyes. But the sound of guests calling his name snapped him back to reality. Jenny, I can't do this right now, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. Can we talk about this another day? Jenny nodded. I didn't come to make things harder for you. I'll wait until you're ready. Zed returned to the ceremony, his mind in turmoil. Yet, he plastered a smile on his face, determined not to let his confusion disrupt the event. The vows were exchanged, the rings placed, and the crowd erupted in cheers. As the newlyweds walked down the aisle, hand in hand, Zed's thoughts remained elsewhere. Jenny's revelation had shaken him to his core, and he knew that life, as he had known it, would never be the same again. The wedding ceremony ended with cheers and joyous applause. Guests mingled, dancing to the beats of traditional African drums, while others indulged in delicacies like jollof rice, suya, and plantains served on intricately designed plates. The air was filled with the aroma of spices, laughter, and celebration. But Zed's mind was far from the festivities. Vivian, radiant in her wedding gown, beamed as she posed for photos with guests. She occasionally glanced at Zed, who seemed distracted. Are you okay, my love? She asked when they had a moment alone. I'm fine, Zed replied, forcing a smile. Just overwhelmed with everything. It's a big day. She nodded, satisfied, and returned to greeting well-wishers. But Zed knew the truth couldn't be suppressed forever. The boy was the spitting image of him. Jenny's words echoed in his mind. He's your son. 3 days later, Zed sat in a corner of an exclusive, African-themed restaurant adorned with wooden carvings and traditional fabrics. The dim lighting created an intimate atmosphere, though Zed's mood was anything but calm. He checked his watch for the third time when he saw Jenny walk in with Dave. Jenny looked composed, her green and gold ochre dress exuding elegance. Dave clung to her hand, his wide eyes taking in the grandeur of the place. As they approached, Zed stood up, unsure of how to act. Thank you for coming, he said awkwardly, pulling out a chair for Jenny. She smiled faintly, sitting down while guiding Dave into a seat beside her. Zed's eyes lingered on the boy, who shyly looked away. Do you want something to eat, Dave? Zed asked, trying to sound casual. Dave glanced at his mother, who nodded. Maybe chicken and rice, the boy said quietly. Zed signaled a waiter and placed the order. The tension between him and Jenny was palpable, though neither seemed eager to address the elephant in the room. After a few minutes of small talk, Zed couldn't hold back anymore. Jenny, I need to understand. How is it possible that I didn't know about him? Jenny sighed, her gaze dropping to the table. Do you remember the final year at the university, Zed? We were so close, but you were always focused on your dreams. You had this fire in you to succeed, and nothing could stand in your way, not even me. Zed frowned, trying to recall. But I never meant to leave you behind. I just thought we were on different paths. You left without saying goodbye, Jenny said, her voice soft but firm. I found out I was pregnant a month later. I tried to reach out, but you were already gone. I heard through mutual friends that you were in Abuja, then London. It felt like you had vanished, and I didn't want to chase someone who clearly didn't want to be found. Zed's heart sank. He hadn't realized how his single-minded pursuit of success had affected others. Jenny, I'm sorry. I never knew. I should have been there. She shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It wasn't easy, Zed. Raising Dave alone was the hardest thing I've ever done. There were days when I didn't know how we'd survive. But I made it through because I had to, for him. Zed turned to Dave, who was quietly eating his food, oblivious to the gravity of the conversation. Does he know? Jenny shook her head. Not yet. I wanted to wait until I was sure you'd be part of his life. I didn't want him to grow up with false hope. The weight of her words settled heavily on Zed. He looked at Dave, who had Zed's dimpled smile and curious eyes. For the first time in his life, Zed felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility. I want to be part of his life, Zed said firmly. I know I've missed so much, but I want to make it right. Please, Jenny. Let me try. Jenny studied him for a long moment. Zed, I'm not asking for money or pity. I just want you to be there for him. Really there. Can you promise me that? I promise, Zed said without hesitation. In the weeks that followed, Zed began spending time with Dave. At first, the boy was shy and hesitant, but Zed's persistence paid off. They played football in Zed's expansive backyard, shared ice cream outings, and even worked on school projects together. For Zed, these moments were transformative. He discovered a side of himself he never knew existed, a side that valued family over ambition. But his growing bond with Dave also brought him closer to Jenny. Watching her care for Dave, Zed couldn't help but admire her strength and resilience. She had built a life for her son despite the odds, and he found himself drawn to her in ways he hadn't anticipated. Vivian, meanwhile, began to notice the changes in Zed. He was often distracted and spent less time at home. Though she tried to ignore it, rumors of her own indiscretions began to surface. Zed, now deeply invested in rebuilding his relationship with Jenny and Dave, paid little attention to the cracks forming in his marriage. One evening, as Zed tucked Dave into bed after a long day, Jenny watched from the doorway. Her heart softened at the sight of them together, though she remained guarded. Jenny, Zed said later, as they sat on the porch overlooking the garden. I can't thank you enough for giving me this chance. I want to make things right, not just with Dave, but with you too. Jenny shook her head. Zed, I'm not sure I can trust you again. You left once. What's to say you won't do it again? I've changed, Zed said earnestly. I didn't realize what I had back then, but I do now. Please, just give me a chance to prove it. Jenny didn't answer immediately. Her heart warred with her mind, torn between fear and the hope of rekindling what they once had. For Zed, it was a beginning, a chance to rebuild not just his family but himself. The days turned into weeks, and Zed's life became a delicate balancing act. On one hand, he was a newlywed to Vivian, attending high-profile events and managing his growing empire. On the other, he was forging a bond with his son, Dave, and rebuilding his relationship with Jenny. It was a dichotomy that, while exciting at times, began to expose cracks in his seemingly perfect world. At first, Vivian didn't question Zed's frequent absences. She assumed his ventures were consuming more of his time, a reality she had come to accept as the wife of a successful businessman. But as weeks passed, she began noticing subtle changes: missed dinners, distracted conversations, and the way Zed's phone seemed to light up more often with messages he quickly dismissed. One evening, as Zed returned home late, Vivian confronted him. She was seated in their expansive living room, adorned with African art and sculptures, her arms crossed tightly. Zed, we need to talk, she said, her tone sharper than usual. Zed sighed, loosening his tie. Can it wait? I've had a long day. No, it can't, Vivian said firmly. What's going on with you? You're distant. You're never around. I feel like I'm married to a ghost. Zed froze, caught between guilt and frustration. I've been busy, Vivian. You know how demanding work can be. It's not just work, Zed, she pressed. There's something else, isn't there? Are you seeing someone? Zed's heart raced. He wasn't prepared to reveal the truth about Jenny and Dave, not yet. Of course not, he lied, his voice steady but unconvincing. Vivian stared at him, her eyes narrowing. I hope you're being honest, Zed. Because if I find out you've been lying to me, I won't stand for it. As the tension in his marriage grew, Zed found solace in his time with Jenny and Dave. They became his refuge from the mounting pressure at home. On weekends, he invited them to his estate, where he and Dave would play football in the backyard or take walks in the garden. Jenny often joined them, her laughter filling the air as she watched father and son bond. For Jenny, these moments were bittersweet. She cherished seeing Dave so happy, but she couldn't ignore the growing connection she felt with Zed. Despite her efforts to keep her guard up, her heart betrayed her. One afternoon, as they sat beneath a large baobab tree on Zed's property, he turned to her. "Jenny, I don't think I've ever thanked you properly for raising Dave. You've done an incredible job," he said, his voice sincere. Jenny smiled faintly. "I did what I had to do. He's my world." Zed hesitated, then added, "I want to be your world too, Jenny. I know I made mistakes, but I want to make things right. For you, for Dave, for us." Jenny's breath caught in her throat. She had spent years burying her feelings for Zed, convincing herself she didn't need him. Yet here he was, offering her the chance to rebuild what they'd lost. "I don't know if I can trust you again, Zed," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving you can," Zed replied, his gaze unwavering. Meanwhile, Vivian began to uncover the truth. A chance encounter with one of Zed's employees revealed that he had been spending significant time with a woman and her child. Furious, Vivian hired a private investigator, who quickly confirmed her suspicions. One evening, Vivian confronted Zed with the evidence. She threw a stack of photos onto the dining table, her face contorted with anger. "Care to explain this?" she demanded. Zed's stomach dropped as he saw the images. Him playing football with Dave, sitting with Jenny in the garden, laughing together. "Vivian, I can explain," he began, but she cut him off. "Don't bother," she snapped. "You've been lying to me since the day we got married. Who's she? And who's the boy?" Zed took a deep breath, knowing there was no point in hiding the truth any longer. "His name is Dave. He's my son. He's his mother." Vivian stared at him in disbelief, her anger giving way to hurt. "You had a child with another woman and didn't tell me? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" "I didn't know about him until recently," Zed said defensively. "Jenny only told me after the wedding." Vivian shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "That doesn't excuse the fact that you've been spending more time with them than with me. I've been nothing but supportive of you, Zed, and this is how you repay me." Their argument escalated, the tension that had been simmering for weeks finally boiling over. By the end of the night, Vivian packed her belongings and left, slamming the door behind her. With Vivian gone, Zed found himself at a crossroads. His marriage was over, but instead of feeling regret, he felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, he could focus on what truly mattered: his son and the woman he had always loved. But winning Jenny's trust wouldn't be easy. She was hesitant to let her guard down, fearing he would leave again. Zed knew he had to prove his commitment, not just with words but with actions. One evening, as they sat in a cozy corner of Jenny's apartment, he knelt before her, holding her hands. "Jenny, I've made mistakes. I've hurt you in ways I can't undo. But I love you. I love Dave. And I want to spend the rest of my life making up for lost time. Will you give me a chance?" Tears filled Jenny's eyes as she looked into Zed's. She saw the sincerity in his gaze, the man who had grown from the boy she once loved. Slowly, she nodded. "Zed, I'll give you a chance." The following week was a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. Zed wasted no time in solidifying his intentions. He planned an intimate yet grand proposal to show Jenny just how serious he was about their future together. The idea of building a family with her and Dave filled him with a renewed sense of purpose. One sunny afternoon, Zed invited Jenny and Dave to his estate for what Jenny assumed was just another day of bonding. But Zed had other plans. The backyard was transformed into a scene straight out of a fairy tale. Flowers of every color adorned the garden, and a small table was set with their favorite snacks. As the sun began to set, Zed got down on one knee, a diamond ring in hand. Dave stood beside him, beaming with excitement. "Jenny," Zed began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "From the moment you came back into my life, you reminded me of what truly matters. You've been my strength, my reason to fight for a better future. I've made mistakes, but you've given me a second chance to make things right. Will you do me the honor of becoming my wife and completing this family?" Jenny was speechless. Tears streamed down her face as she looked at Zed, then at Dave, who was nodding enthusiastically. She felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging and hope. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Zed, I will marry you." The three embraced, their laughter echoing in the garden. It was a moment of pure joy, the beginning of a new chapter. The days leading to the wedding were filled with excitement. This time, the preparations reflected both Zed's and Jenny's personalities. They opted for a blend of modern elegance and traditional African culture. Guests were invited to wear attire that celebrated the continent's rich heritage, and the ceremony was to be held in the same garden where Zed had proposed. Zed's mother, who had initially been skeptical of Jenny, grew fond of her as she saw how happy she made her son. She also adored Dave, doting on him as her first grandchild. The wedding day arrived with clear skies and a cool breeze. Jenny walked down the aisle in a stunning gown made from a blend of white lace and traditional African fabric. Her hair was adorned with gold beads, and her smile lit up the entire venue. Zed stood at the altar in a royal blue agbada embroidered with gold, his heart pounding as he watched Jenny approach. Dave walked ahead of her, carrying the rings, his face full of pride and excitement. The ceremony was heartfelt and emotional. They exchanged vows under the same baobab tree where they had shared so many memories. Zed promised to be the husband and father he had failed to be in the past, while Jenny pledged to trust him and build a future together. When the officiant declared them husband and wife, the guests erupted in cheers. Traditional drummers began playing, and dancers filled the space with vibrant energy. The couple shared their first dance under a canopy of twinkling lights, surrounded by loved ones. In the months that followed, Zed and Jenny settled into their new life. Dave adjusted well, thrilled to have his father around full-time. The three of them shared countless moments of joy, from family dinners to movie nights. Jenny and Zed also welcomed a new addition to their family, a baby girl they named Amara, meaning grace. Her arrival brought even more happiness, solidifying their bond as a family. Zed's life had come full circle. From the young man who had once chased success at the expense of relationships, he had learned the true meaning of fulfillment. His family became his greatest achievement, a testament to love, forgiveness, and second chances. As Zed watched Jenny and Dave play with baby Amara in the garden one afternoon, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life hadn't gone the way he'd planned, but it had brought him something far greater than he could have imagined, a family that loved and completed him. For Zed, Jenny, Dave, and Amara, the future was bright. Together, they embraced every moment, knowing they had overcome the past to create a beautiful life filled with love, unity, and hope.